Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And we are coming for you in England in the middle of our nice little storm that's going on.
Yeah, what do they call it? Storm Dana?
It's Dara. I thought it was Storm Bertha.
There was Storm Bert.
I think there was Bertha a couple of years ago, but
Storm Bert was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So now
the name changes a lot. I think that's why I may have mixed up Dara and Bert to make Bertha.
Maybe,
because all that went through my head when I was driving over here, because you'd messaged me like yesterday saying about like not driving because of those high winds
and that you have to walk over naked.
Yeah.
Of course.
But I did. I braved the strong winds, and all I kept thinking on the way, I was like, it's Storm Bertha. I was like,
Storm Bertha.
I was like, why did Storm Bertha seem like such a name for like something big and massive?
Big and powerful.
I apologise for anyone who's called Bertha.
Any Bertha.
Because in my head it was like, Bertha's like, that's a beast.
That is a beast.
You know,
Bertha.
she is a beast. She's going to do, you know. Although I guess Bertha, she'll get you where you need to go. But she might kill you on the way.
She'll get you going. Good old Bertha. She'll get you going. She'll keep your motor running.
I'm pretty sure there was like some animated film where they called the big like beast of a machine or something like Cars or like Futurama or something where it was like that's Bertha.
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, Storm Bertha or Storm
Dara, which sounds
Dara.
more like some Irish bloke in the pub.
Yeah, it does. Storm Dara has taken 3 of my neighbour's fences, so we're dealing with that this morning. It's fucking horrendous, but we've braved it.
We have
to bring you an episode on the 1974 kind of slasher, proto-slasher, I guess you say.
Yeah.
In an odd way.
It pretty much is a
It
Christmas
kind of is
slasher,
a Christmas
cult
slasher,
classic.
Yeah, Black Christmas.
Black Christmas.
From
yes.
1974, not the 2003 remake or the 2019 remake.
No. The original. And it's weird because lots of people might know different versions of this. There's almost, it does feel like you had the 74, 2006, and then you had, I can't remember, 2019, something like that, for those ones. And to be honest, all 3 of them, although they come from the same spring of an idea of the sorority house and things like that, you know, as someone who is after them, they're all very different films. I haven't seen the 2006 one in a very long time.
I've seen it once, and that was... It was around that time, we've alluded to it quite a few times on the podcast, of that like mid to late like 2000s, 2010s, we're remaking all the old classics.
Yeah.
And I know I watched it, but I think it got lost in with Last House on Sorority, or The House on Sorority Row, or one of those remakes that was pretty good, and just kind of it was in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think I saw it once or twice. I saw it in the cinema. I remember watching it in the cinema. So I did see it at the time in the cinema. I can't remember what it was at the time, but I just remember it was like, it wasn't the best of horror films, I gotta admit. It had a weird, really like creepy though twist to it, which is not from the original. And it did somewhat take us. I'm pretty sure it has a somewhat inbreeding like twist of, and it goes more into who is this person who's living in the walls, and it kind of reveals much more of like who the person is. Yeah, okay. Which is weird. And then obviously the 2019 version was very much more of a feminist. Twist, which does have its leading in the original film, to be fair. There is a little bit of a kind of feminist kind of approach in the original film, but that one kind of took it to the next level by twisting.
It was kind of like, it was kind of a very modern kind of twist on it.
They all had their merits. I actually think I somewhat enjoy, from what I can remember, all of them in that way. Just the 2019... I think went for where it was actually quite interesting, and then it kind of twisted, and then I think it actually took it too far. It took its point too far, to the point where it started making actually them look negative, which wasn't good.
No, I remember, because I know that the 2019 one was very like shit on, but I remember watching it and being like 2/3 of it was pretty good, and then it got to the end, and then I was like, it almost feels like it's jumped into like parody now, and I'm like, is this like a scary movie for the last third?
I got, and it was one of those, and I think because it's not one of those, because I've seen lots of people or like who have all mentioned it. That it was kind of like I really liked the idea and how you're using it and how you're kind of taking inspiration from the original. Yeah, and then they were like, and then by the third act, you'd not only taken that kind of feminist horse, you beat that thing to death.
Yeah,
you literally made it so that people start to be like, are we in the same film now?
Yeah.
So all those different ones. But the weird thing for me was the fact that I think I don't know how much of this original I had seen, but I don't think I'd ever watched it all the way through. Or if I did, I wasn't paying attention at all.
Okay.
Because I was genuinely surprised by this film. By like how much I loved this film.
Okay.
So I'm just coming straight out of it into there. I was literally like, I did not expect. Like I was like, oh, I remembered the other ones. I was like, yeah, they were alright. I kind of liked the ideas. I liked the plot thing. But I guess when I'd watched it, I don't know if I started watching it because the first half of the film seemed very familiar, and then the second half I was like, I have no idea. So I either watched part of it and then I don't know, just got distracted and did something else. God knows when I watched it. I might have been a teenager.
Yeah, probably.
Either looking at my phone or
beating off.
Probably.
Just beating off. That's all teenagers
distracted by that. That's what I was doing at the time.
Off.
Yeah, that's all you do at that time. So so I was generally surprised by how much like I enjoyed this film.
Well, that's good, because I'd seen it before, but I think it was a long time ago, and I remember pretty much all of it except the very end. I seemed to remember the end, like it just went out of my head. It wasn't something that I remember at all. I mean, before we get into it, I'm going to do my classic, which is the cheap plug, which is to remind you to hit that subscribe button. We are entering into December, the time for giving, and what better gift than to give your two favourite co-hosts of this particular horror podcast 5-star review and a subscribe. That's a nice little one for you.
So, Black Christmas, directed by Bob Clark.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I saw that he directed another kind of cult classic film called Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things in 1972. And
I've never heard of that one.
No, it's like a horror comedy, I think. So it's a bit weird because I think like maybe that was the thing that got him into doing, Black Christmas. I don't really know. But then he also ended up doing Porky's.
Yeah, this is the thing. He has a very eclectic because he's actually known for an extremely classic, not so much for us, but for Americans. He made A Christmas Story, which is this huge, like American holiday film that they watch all the time. About like it's a very like rural kind of setting, kind of small town where this boy Ralphie lives, and he really wants his pistol gun for Christmas and things that kind of thing. And ends up like shooting himself in the eye or something like that.
But, great.
not to a damaging lost his eye effect, but
yeah.
He both directed like what seemed to many as like the pinnacle of horror like Christmas films, and also like for Americans like their one of the like major favorite holiday Christmas films. But two very different like areas of it. It's just weird that he's known as this festive holiday classic, and in the background he's got this really dark, quite dark, quite Christmas like thriller in the background that inspired a lot of other horrors that kind of came from this.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the kind of, it obviously did have a big influence on Halloween.
It's literally I've read about lots of different ways, and there doesn't seem to be one specific account that seems to completely all match up.
That's always the case.
They said the studio wanted to make a sequel to this. Like they wanted them to do a sequel, and then Bob Clark didn't want to do a sequel, but had an idea about a sequel.
Yeah.
What could have happened, but he didn't want to kind of ruin the legacy of where this film gets at the end. So John Carpenter was actually like close friends with him, and he said to him about, and there's a conversation where I think Bob Clark literally went to him and went, basically, if I did a sequel, it would be that he got arrested that night, he got put in an institution, then he escapes, nobody realises he escapes, he comes back for that one night, and I would have set it on Halloween.
Okay.
So the basic exact plot line of Halloween. And he's been quoted, that is an actual quote from Bob Clark, who laid out that basically exact plot. And he said that to John Carpenter. He takes no account, though. He does say Halloween is John Carpenter's film. I may have, that was my idea.
Yeah.
But other accounts say that, John Carpenter was actually approached to make a sequel to Black Christmas. And he was going to make a sequel to Black Christmas about living in a mental institution, and then the idea came somewhat from that, which was taken from the style of Black Christmas.
Yeah.
But John Carpenter has said how much he loves Black Christmas and how much he does know, has talked with Bob Clark. So I think there's some truth in there, but there just seems to be lots of different accounts that kind of which one is it? Were you making a sequel? Did you make Halloween as its own thing?
Like a spiritual success.
But it's definitely inspired.
I mean, the opening up is the POV of Billy, or this unseen man kind of sneaking into this sorority house and then slithering up to the attic, and it kind of does have that weirdness to it.
I almost feel bad at how many times we've probably pointed out Halloween being that OG of the POV, and then be actually, sorry, it was Black Christmas. And it's not. It's also there's Peeping Tom and all that, all that. Yeah. But how much the exact almost style, even somewhat in the way that it's shot, is actually very close to Halloween.
Very similar. Yeah.
Kind of is and it being a good few years before Halloween, it's kind of a bit I apologise that actually really Bob Clark kind of did this first.
But he also has the heavy breathing as well, which is
he does. He has his own. Well. He has his own style
lip
to
smacks.
it.
I hate lip smacks.
But it's a really cool open. I love a POV shot.
Yeah.
Don't take it to that dark.
Don't take it to that dark place. It's Christmas.
It's Christmas.
It's time for giving.
We're keeping this Christmas. We're talking about mutilating sorority girls at Christmas. This is light.
This is light. We're keeping it classy.
Show it to your kids.
Show it to your kids. It's I think the overall kind of film has a lot of the reason why I kind of said at the start is it's that proto slasher is because it obviously it is a slasher film, but it's kind of a bit before we did get into that golden age. So a lot of it is a relatively bloodless film, but a lot of the DNA is there. You have you have in essence a final girl. You have mostly one location, the sorority house. You have an all-female cast. Even the sorority house itself then obviously went on to be kind of a classic setting.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of the bones are there. I feel my main thing is I feel the main story of it isn't kind of really that interesting. That's where I kind of felt at least one half of the story. I was I completely fucking blocked this kind of typical 70s dad with the bald head, the big thick glasses.
That was one part that wasn't so that was a bit odd within the kind of plot. I think I was more what raised this one for me is more of those little the very final girl kind of story, because it was one of the earlier kind of approaches of this proper actual strong written female characters. I think they are actually quite good for the most part. Or at least show that there's not just being the kind of throwaway. They are all quite different. They are all they're not just the same kind of girls. Each one is Olivia Hussey's main character is very much her own from Margot Kidd, who's basically the party girl drunk.
Yeah.
And even Mrs. McKay, who's even her own little. She's also a bit of a drunk. The matron, but she's also got her own kind of attitude and thing. And I also think it's just it felt like it was one of those ones, an early ones, that we had of that time with Texas Chainsaw as well, where you had female characters who feel you could actually feel they were real people who were acting out, a little swearing,
a little bit more flesh,
talking about their sexuality a bit more, and not just kind of these more tamed off you need to be this perfect, the proper more not the horror golden age, but the other golden age of cinema when we're talking about Hitchcock and stuff, when they had to be this perfect damsels in distress. Not that they couldn't sometimes be strong, but they also had to be proper and these could be messy. I mean, I love Margot Kidd as
Barb.
Barb is is fucking she just says it the way she is. Her performance, I think, is so good great in this.
And the first kind of scene, I was is Barb supposed to be the asshole? Or is she supposed to be a bit of a badass? I mean, it's clear that she's a bit of a villainous asshole, but she is a great character.
Yeah.
And I made the mistake of I was watching it, and Olivia Hussey. Obviously, we covered It recently.
We did. We talked of we talked of Olivia Hussey being many boys' first. There are some large breasts.
There's some large breasts. I enjoy large breasts.
Romeo and Juliet.
And I was watching it, and I was I didn't know that, Audra was in it. So the whole of my notes, I just called her Audra instead. And I just finished reading it as well. And I was like, Audra. You know, I was like, what do you mean, Jess? No, Audra.
This is who she is.
This is Audra Denborough, nobody else. But it's got quite a decent cast. Obviously, John Saxon.
Yeah.
The first line of my notes is John Saxon is an old school shagger. You know, he's an absolute don. You know,
the first line of Rip King. The first line of my notes is based on because you get the obviously very quickly you get the first house phone ring.
Oh, I know.
And mine was yours is that's exactly the way you sound on any phone call.
Of course, it is.
Pig noises. Can't lick it.
Yeah, let me lick your.
I was like, that's just talking to Rob on the phone.
Yeah, that's just like listening to me, isn't it? That's just like trying to plan a
snorting hog.
plan an episode to record the podcast. You know. But yeah, it is. It's real creepy. You know,
it's I thought the phone calls are so good in this. Like the way the performance that's given, like the way that they're talking, kind of going off on little tangents, like you can tell that the person's really disturbed in their way, like changing character voices really well, and you know, going from like a mother's voice to like as trying to sound like a girl to sound like a child screaming to sound, and sometimes I think it actually is a child or is a woman screaming in the background, and that's what makes it so like creepy. One of the things I found most interesting in this film is the fact that I feel like you don't actually fully and you know, again, you've got a little bit of that, like what kind of came with Halloween is the fact that you don't really know who that killer is, like properly.
No.
There's all this assumption, all this guessing. You think it's going to be, you know, who's it going to be? Is it going to be one of them? That's the assumption because we're used to that. And I think from watching now and not having fully like realised it before and not understanding the ending and stuff like that, I was very much in that set mind frame that was almost set with those like more slashes where it's like, who is it? Who's the
who? It's a who done it.
Who done it? So your mind is very much in that.
Fake Agatha Christie influence.
Yeah. But what I really loved is the fact that I actually think because you get all these little tidbits about possible like murders and stuff like that. So what I like is you don't actually understand the full reach of this killer. It feels very much like a real murderer because you don't understand like how many people he's killed. We even get obviously a murder that happens that isn't related to the sorority girls, but you get a phone call where you can hear like a child screaming in the background, and it makes it so haunting. I found once I started to click into the fact that it's like this is both him insane, possibly, you know, they're in their house, and also at the same time also sometimes ringing where it could be where he's actually got someone else and murdering them, and I start to be like, this is actually really disturbing.
Oh, it's weird because it's based upon that classic urban legend of, you know, the babysitter and the killers in the house, that whole thing. But apparently it is based on a series of murders that took place in Montreal, in Quebec, where there were just some random people being killed in houses, I believe.
I think it was like a 14-year-old boy or so, wasn't it? That was found to be like the murderer. I think it was something like that from what I read.
But going to the point that you were making, we find out, like, because the sorority are having this party, and I think the next day they're all going to be planning on leaving for the holidays. Which is the classic thing of like, well, you can't have a cast of like 20 people. You got to narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's a good way of getting people out. But you also have things like they mentioned. Oh, like there was a sorority sister that was like raped in the park like a couple of nights ago, and then there's like this murder, and it feels as if you're coming in to the culmination of something. Yeah. Like it's not like
you're part of the way
just started. It's part of the way in, and then you have that really good kind of like Hitchcock technique where we know pretty straight away that the killer's in the house, but everybody else in the house doesn't. And you have some great shots where you can see him like on the periphery of the camera walking across like the upstairs, and you can hear the creak, but downstairs you can hear the party, and you're just thinking like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, it's so horrid.
This is one of those ones that I think I can see why people would rewatch it again and again, because I feel like I was straight away like, as I said, like I remembered little bits of the beginning and stuff like that, but I was noticing, and I kind of like to watch it again purely because I want to like look out for all those bits, because I feel like there's a lot of clever. Because obviously it's not too long till we get to the first murder.
No. Which is when I think Claire Harrison. I've got the old plot summary up because
I was trying to get
my notes just do kind of like.
I never
around.
put the proper names on the video.
No, I just put like
this lass?
I just put like glasses woman.
That lass who died.
That lass who dies.
She got bag on it.
But the first kill's the shower. You know, where she goes upstairs and you can kind of have POV shot of like that the killer Billy. I keep wanting to call him Bob, but that's Mr. Bob Clark. Of Billy like hidden behind the shower watching her.
Or the Mona.
The Mona. I'm not calling him the Mona. The Mona. Bob Clark's just like
phone calls.
He's just like, Olivia Hussey, I've got this great idea about a character called the Mona. Now you just need to answer the phone call and just listen as I moan. And he's just beating off, you know. He's very Hitchcock in that style, you know, hand in cock.
Well, she goes because it's Claire who goes to then because she's packing to leave, isn't she? So she goes to that. But talking about that kind of like seeing them back is the fact that you can literally like see the figure in the back of the closet. You can't fully see him because he's by all of because the clothes are all covered in like that like clear plastic kind of thing to cover them over. But you can just see that there's something hiding in the back of that closet. You're almost wondering like what you'd see, which is really cool because she's kind of going back and forth, but you can see in the cupboard behind her, she's like moving around, she's like packing her things, and then she goes and then she goes to grab something, and then she finally like you know, kind of notices something there, and it's, you know, it's really like creepy to be able to like I know like someoe's there, but I put in my notes, if I see someone in my closet, I'm not going, who is that? Like, because she calls out like, who's that there? Who's that? Like, thinking it's probably, I guess it's one of her sorority sisters having a little prank on her or something like that. Because she just seemed to be a bit more of the kind of the good girl. The good girl. You know, she's the good Christian girl or Catholic girl or whatever. You know, but you know, who else isn't getting the fuck out of there when okay. Someone's in the back of your closet. It definitely looks like the outline of a man.
I just back
and
out.
You're just like,
just Homer Simpson in the hedge.
Yeah, I'm going to go closer in and like see. It's like I'm going to get the fuck. But again, I guess you feel safer in your home, don't you? So you think, it's fine. Who are you, mate? Who are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing in here?
And then we get the you know, just the pulling off of the bag and then like wrapped around her head as she gets it. And it lingers on it for a while, even while she's dying, kind of thing. It's quite
it's definitely like the setup for the iconic bit, and it's fucking horrid. He takes her body up to the attic, you know.
But what's really interesting is she's the first kill, and yet she's present throughout the whole film. Yeah, because they constantly go back to the one girl that's sat in the attic who's dead, who like everyone else is getting on their daily thing, and in the attic. Here's this girl like on the rocking
chair,
and through the window you can see outside, and
it's
like
fucking rock.
Those shots, and you'll basically really see iconic, her dead body. Yeah,
you know?
I mean, it's the poster, you know, kill, but it's it's also just like I like the way that it's like the presence of death is like they don't understand that the presence of death is literally above them. It's
just
time.
Up there.
Yeah, and nobody goes in to check because who's going to check. And you could also imagine that in that kind of place, it's like, well, the attic's not really ours. It's almost like not the place that anyone's going to go into. Cause like,
I mean, to be honest, I was like, yeah, of course you've got to check the attic. It's the one thing.
I mean, for people, at the end of the film, I'm definitely... 100%. I was 100% like, what is happening? I've definitely got questions when it comes to the very end of the film.
But I'd also be like, if you've got to be packing to go home, like, you might put something in the attic. For storage, you know.
Well, but then I can say the whole time I lived at university, we never went into the attic that was in our place, you know. It's kind of just like you have your space, your room, your areas, and you're just like that's not really ours. You almost feel like weirdly that's not yours. It's like someone else's. So no one else. The only one is Miss McKay. Is the only one I thought maybe as a house lady, but I wouldn't trust her on stairs. Or ladders.
And then, when she goes to the attic, it doesn't end well.
Well, I'm actually surprised that the attic is not a liquor store.
She loves
Go for the Americanism there, the liquor. I'm surprised that there's not a whole, basically, convenience store of just alcohol in the thing. Considering how much alcohol she seems to have hidden in every book and everything. It's like, damn it, this bottle's empty. This bottle's empty.
It is Christmas.
I love that little... I love that little book.
Setup.
Like that little kind of dark humour that's kind of placed, because at times it does feel like quite dark and like full on, but then there are just like light humorous points. She is part of the humour of the film.
She is. See, I seem to remember they did a remake of House on Sorority Row, and Carrie Fisher plays a very similar role in that. She's the house matron who loves Kanan, and she's great in that film. And that film is a really good slasher remake. And I kind of merged the two together because they're quite similar.
Yeah.
But I
think it's Andrea Martin played Andrea Martin played in the 2006 remake. She played Mrs. McKay. So in this one, she's Phyllis. In this one, so she's one of the girls. But in the remake, she was that one. And I can't remember in 2019 if they brought anyone else back to do that.
Well, it's a pretty much different film.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine so bad. So like the next day, because the inciting incident is, Claire gets fucking, she's cooked, she's gone. And then Claire's father, Mr. Harrison, who, as I alluded to earlier, is that classic 70s, old man. He's got the receding hairline, he's got the Dharma glasses, pedo mustache. I blame him for this falling out, a mustache could be cool on the right person, but now it's a paedophile thing. Dharma glasses, Dharma just did irreparable damage for glasses wearers, and then receding hairline is just, it's a bad move. He's cooked. He's triple cooked.
He's hitting all of those.
He's hitting all the things you don't want. But
apologise to all those people right now that are feeling really hit right now.
But if you've got all
hit me three ways.
If you got all three, I'm sorry, man. I'm really
need to shave those sides.
Shave those sides.
The sides are never a good look.
Shave the moustache. Get some contacts. That's my advice. Look like a fun as opposed to.
You'll literally have that Gok Wan treatment if you do that. You'll look like 10 years younger.
Yeah, you're getting Gok Wan on the podcast.
That's us. We're giving you this advice. If you look like a serial killer, sort it out. If you're thinking, why am I alone this Christmas? We're going to save you.
A shave.
Reach for the razor, but not for your wrists. I apologise.
Yes.
Going dark.
It's going dark already. It's supposed to be Christmas. Where's the levity? But yeah, this is also where we find out that I was about to say Audra, where Jess, Olivia Hussey, is pregnant, which is quite ahead of its time as well, especially for a horror film.
Yeah, I think that's another one of those things where it's such, especially for America, touched on the whole I mean, obviously this is kind of more of a Canadian technically production, isn't it, than the American production, but hitting on those notes of abortion and stuff is quite, at the time, is quite a hot button issue, obviously.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it's following 60s. There's a lot of the kind of, obviously, following the 60s movements here, where you've got a lot of that kind of strong will that's coming through. But having a whole, plot line that pretty much follows about the baby and the things with the baby is quite a strong thing. I think it's interesting, and it's not. I don't feel it's overdone too much. There's enough going on around it that if this was the main bit, you might be a little bit like, okay, this is a bit much kind of thing. But I think it gets somewhat sidelines enough at times that you're like, okay,
I don't know. I feel the opposite. I almost feel like this is a bit more interesting than Claire's dad.
This is more interesting. I just meant if it was all focused just on that the whole time, I think it would be too much if that was the main Luckily, because it's almost a little bit more ensemble, you've got a bit more thing.
Yeah.
Claire's dad, you're right, is thing. Although to be fair, the interaction with Claire's dad and Mrs. McKay, I think is fucking class.
Oh yeah, they work.
That whole bedroom scene when she's trying to cover over the poster and trying to be that Claire's a good girl and does these and things, and then he keeps saying these things in that very kind of he's raising his eyebrows and that very I'm a very religious man. I assume is she not praying in this room? But she's trying to tell me she's very good, but she keeps tripping over herself in that way. Good, take me down there, or when she's swearing at him going down the stairs because he's just being a right.
There's a little bit of comedy in there.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that this wasn't a video nasty.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I was thinking this would end up in that feature, but
it hits on on some of those themes. It's not massively bloody, so maybe that's what
might be what saves it. But then even then it's not bloody, but even the
asphyxiation you can hear.
To be fair, when some of the characters go later, there's a fairly I know it's not full you're not seeing it ripped apart, but it feels quite dark. Some of the ones later with Barb and stuff like that. I think
Barb's
actually
death is
quite violent.
Barb's death was the one that made me be a bit but more because of how it's shot.
Yeah, I think so. And again, I think it's well done in terms of you don't really fully see them.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's good because you I think you are drawn in by some of the characters, so therefore you care. Barb's comes as quite a shock, I think, because it's quite I think a strong character that she comes across. I know she was dead, but it was more of a I guess it's not the way I fully expected her to go, but anyway, that's for later. But she you know, what I do like about her actually is the fact that it's actually quite nuanced in the fact that, you know, she does act out, but you feel like there's a deeper kind of... It leaves enough for her that sometimes that she's okay, that you feel like there's something really, like, wrong in her past. I think there's even a bit when it talks about the rape of the girl in the other thing where it kind of has a moment with her where it's a bit like... There's something more we're not being told that's happened with Barb. Maybe. She's not just a drunk for no reason. She's either had something or something in her past. She's escaping something.
Maybe I think that might have gone
here at university kind of thing. I
just got the impression she was fucking on the piss. Because, you know, that's what I.
Well, but that's why I just think I don't know if it's just in Margot Kidder's. I was about to say Robbie. Margot Robbie, long before. In her performance or something like that. But I don't know. I felt like there was she gave a little bit of levity to her performance.
Not levity. There was a layer to it. Levity is like humour.
Yeah. Well, there is a humour to it as well.
Yeah.
But layers. Like an onion.
Layers like an onion. And then, you know, they go to the police and they're like, Claire's gone. But he doesn't take him seriously until the boyfriend with the absolute class fur coat comes in.
Oh yeah,
you know, I fucking love that fur coat. Imagine being a dude in the 70s.
Yeah,
in a massive fur coat. That would be the.
He's just like,
class.
We've got to fucking do something about
you
this.
Like an absolute dog, you know.
Although this does have again, Barb fucking classic the fellatio scene.
Oh yeah,
where she is fucking pissed.
Yeah, she's
pissed all the time. I love it. Where actually, again. For the humour part, this is the only reason I can stand Claire's dad is because he was just such like a play off against.
Yeah,
like when Claire was so drunk and basically trying to get a child to drink at the like little do that they do it. He was like, have a little bit of have a little bit of this.
So sad
and the dad is just there like fucking like absolutely like astonished and like, oh my god,
yeah,
who have I sent these to? And then her at the figure like spelling it out for him. I mean, that's so funny. And the payoff with the John Saxon scene where the guy is like. Spelling it out to him, and the dude across is just like fucking pissing himself. And he's like, "What is this?"
Yeah, John Saxon's an absolute dog as well. You know, because I feel like it. I don't say like it slows down, but I feel like I don't find it like the main story of trying to find Claire massively interesting. I think because I definitely have seen this at least once before. I'm pretty sure my brother had it on DVD, and I remember watching it because there are a lot of the deaths I remember. I said about the ending. I remember the abortion storyline, but I don't remember the whole like Claire didn't turn up. We have to find her. I don't remember that's kind of being the main driving force of it.
Yeah,
I remember it being a bit more like
it's definitely something in the remake where that's not. I don't remember that being so much of a. And the kills and stuff are much more thick and fast.
Probably,
I think much more slasher in the other versions.
Much more.
This one has a lot of that. I mean, it kind of. But I guess you've got the whole Claire lingering over them. That's kind of.
Yeah.
So Claire is somewhat of the main parts, but I like what comes from like what they find on the way. But yeah, I'm not so bothered about the whole. I guess it's because you know what's happened.
Yeah.
It's a bit to be like. It's not like it's a mystery of where Claire's gone. It's like for you, it's like we know something they don't know. But I guess that somewhat leaves a little bit of the. Yeah, but we know. So
yeah.
So let's kind of let's get to who's like next. But they do because they have a lot of things like the search party and stuff like that, where they find the little girl Janice. You know, and you know you've got that kind of scene with the 13-year-old girls also like kind of they can't find, but then as they're meant to be more on a search party for Claire at that point, the dad, and then they find the girl, and you had a phone call with.
The Mona.
With the Mona kind of on the thing, and that's the one where I said about like there was like a girl screaming in the background, which you're like, is it him changing his voice to sound like that because it changes all these weird creepy sounds and voices, or is it is it that? And then I kind of just assumed it was like that was actually him getting the girl murdered or whatever the fuck he was doing.
Yeah.
When they find Janice like in the middle of the play. What you also have in like what I thought made it really dark, and I think it's more because my head played up what it was, but like they have no, they kind of include the fact that it makes like you have the dogs when they find Janice out on the park, and they have the dogs, and the dogs run and the dogs bark, and it sounds like the dogs are freaking like it sounds like they start like attacking or like tearing. It sounds like they're literally everyone's horrified because they're seeing the dogs find her, and then for some reason start like tearing into her, like eating her. I was like, in my head, that's what it sounded like.
The body.
It didn't sound like dogs just barking. It sounded like dogs attacking something.
Yeah, it does.
So to me, it made it more horrific in my mind because it's like they'd like the only reason they find the girl is because the dogs start literally tearing into the girl. So in my head made it way darker. I think it's just more the search dogs find her and are barking, but it sounded more like they were like tearing into her, or like it made noises like ripping noises or something. So in my head it was like that's way darker. It's those moments that made the search for Claire. Yeah. Although I didn't feel like the search for Claire after this bit with the girl petered off a bit. The whole
it
Claire
kind of does
peters off because it goes much more to
just the house.
Just the house, and the police are now like actually taking it seriously. We're going to tap into the house, and it really loses focus from Claire's dad and like you can fuck off.
Yeah,
now.
you can fuck off.
Yeah, because now we're going to be focusing on like Jess in the house, like she's like really freaked out. Everyone else is weirdly not too isn't nearly as bothered as Jessica, who's now like so basically now you are the main girl now. Definitely, we've decided you're definitely the main one. So now you have to stay in the house and do the phone calls, and you've got to wait, and everyone else can go off and get murdered, but you have to stay by the phone.
Yeah, you have to stay. We get Miss McHenry's death sometime a little bit around the search party, and that's a fun little one where she's kind of searching around. She's fucking been on the piss all day, and she's like, I'm gonna go check the attic, see if she's in there.
She finally checks the attic.
She finally checks the attic, which makes sense. And that's where we get the great shot of her in the rocking chair in the window, which does imply that Billy's been rocking her. You know. And it, like the thing that I do like about it is they have this kind of weird thing of like you don't really find out anything about Billy. Like nobody comes out as directly like he's deranged or anything like that. Yeah. But they have this thing of like she's rocking.
Yeah.
And rocking chairs you don't just do it and then it goes. So he must have been doing that, and he's almost putting her up like a decoration in a weird way. And you see the classic shot of like the curtain in her mouth. Yeah. And then Miss McCready, I was about to say Miss McHenry, like screams, and then she gets the hook,
the crane hook that gets, and then she like see her legs like dangle down, kind of thing. Which I thought again, you're not seeing the bloodlessness for, but I still think it was like a really cool like shot.
Yeah,
the whole scene's very like it's creepy enough, that like what's he seeing, but. It's like, what are you seeing? But I like the fact that Billy's got this whole like you can read into as much as you can, just by the phone calls and just by these little like moments in the attic of like, well, who's doing that?
How's weird that moments, like,
or who's moving that around the house, or why is that kind of slightly changed in this scene? It's like, okay, it must be Billy hanging around.
Yeah,
the Mona.
The Mona. I'm sure they kept some of that in with the 2006 remake. I seem to have these like weird visions come back to me.
It has parts there. It's just the explanation fully changes where, like many of those 2000 ones, it was like, we must explain.
We must
explain who it is. It has to be this. So
it has the freeze frame when the director comes in and
it goes
speaks directly
really
to the camera.
Weird. Like Billy is almost like an inbred creature, like a guy. He's really weird. It's a really weird kind of what majorly like some of the kills and stuff were all right, and it was a much more slasher film. But I definitely remember it being like, what the fuck is happening now? Why have we suddenly gone like this? And I much more prefer the nice sleight of hand that this film gives than any of the other versions.
I'm just trying to remember because I have only watched it once, and I just seem to remember like these weird bits and pieces. I'm trying to see who was who was in it, but every time I Google it, it all just comes in Russian. There's a problem with letting my wife borrow the laptop. So I will jump back to the 1974 version. So this is when they kind of John Saxon, the man himself, is like, all right, let's put a wiretap on the phone. Like something serious is going on. It's not just somebody ringing up and beating off. It's like probably related to Claire's disappearance. Like, how long has this been happening? They say it's been happening for like a couple of days. And we get Barb's death, which is really well done. We get the Christmas carolers who come and sing in, and I'm just thinking like, what's the etiquette when you get Christmas? Christmas carolers.
You stand awkwardly at the door
just
until they go, and then you have to, like, I guess nowadays it's be like, you want money? I don't carry cash.
I don't carry cash. But then they put it in one of those card readers.
Or you just close the door, turn off the lights, and be like, stay away from me.
And say, go away. Be gone from
Or you could be that one person that's like, fuck off.
Just, I don't want your fucking carols.
Or you could walk out the door and act like Billy. Mentally making pig noises and just like until they run.
I think that's the better option, like man, bear, pig.
Yeah. Just next year, just dress up in your scariest costume and just run out the door and just
go
make them run.
that way.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
I haven't had a carol singer for years, and I don't know, they wouldn't get anything from me if they did.
We have become a dark and cruel race that no longer invites these pleasantries into our houses.
No, if you do turn up at my door, I just pour boiling oil on it. It's treated like a medieval siege.
Yeah, we're back to the medieval time. We are in the darkest of times.
Tar and feathered, and if we don't have tar, we'll just come on you.
Adding that extra layer.
Extra layer of shame, humiliation.
Shame.
Fucking hell.
Mine's going dark.
Mine's going dark. But yeah, Barb's death is it's great. You know, we have this. Barb's steaming, so she goes to bed. And then she's got, what is it? It's kind of like is it like a reindeer or like a unicorn?
Unicorn, like she has a bunch of like glass like figurines and stuff.
And there's something so kind of like
she gets the horn.
There's something so horrid between just how it's kind of shot, because Barb's asleep, isn't she? She's fucking passed out.
Yeah.
And you see it slowly kind of being raised. And Jess is downstairs, like mesmerised by the carol singers. Like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
I can't remember what they say. Like, here come the bells. Or something like that. I can't remember.
Christmas song, whatever.
But it's really effective in the scene. The music works really like well alongside. I just can't remember exactly the song off the top of my head.
Sending the Cavalry by Joe whatever it is.
It definitely wasn't that.
They're singing that. She's loving it. That's the weirdest Christmas song ever.
That would completely change the tone of my scene. Certain Christmas songs, if you just put them into these scenes, it would just be so weird.
So then, she gets offed, and it's so
but it's like the hand goes down, and like it's one of the fewer bloodier ones though, isn't it? Because you do get the blood.
I can't remember if you do get the blood.
Yeah, there's definitely blood in this scene. You get blood. You definitely get blood because blood also splatters over the figurines.
I know.
So it's one of the few bloodier ones that you actually get, because there's not many bloody ones.
But I think this is probably the bloodiest one.
Yeah,
because I think the mate with the glasses, that's just what I've called her in this, mate with the glasses, gets an off-screen death, but then you see her kind of dead. I would hate, if I was in a horror movie, I'd hate to be in the last act and to have an off-screen death. That'd be
so shit. Yeah,
don't kill me off-screen.
It just proves how like little that character sadly.
How little you add to it.
Like she's just there for conversations normally, but she's never the focus of a conversation. Sadly, is it Phyllis, that one?
Probably she looks like Phyllis.
Yeah, and that must be the Phyllis. So yeah, and that's the one I said that goes on to play Mrs. McKay in the remake. So but she doesn't really. Sadly, she doesn't make much of an impact here.
No,
Margot Kidder would have been the better choice to be the the callback, because she makes more impacts.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially to be the drunk.
Yeah, 100.
They should have just said that she somehow survived.
Yeah,
she is fine. Now the matriarch.
But then there's also the point of view. Like, I'm sure there's one in that scene after, where he's watching the carol singers as well. Yeah, and he's stood at the top of the stairs watching. I'm sure there is one.
Yeah, well, because Phyllis, obviously, like before she did die, she did find she is the one that finds the dead body, and then gets off. Like, well, yeah, you don't really see what happens following.
I think it happens over a phone call, doesn't it?
Yeah, And then we get the absurd, and then this is when we get the whole like everyone's kind of
This is when it's like, I like the
Peter?
Scene.
Yeah,
because
Peter is so obviously the red herring character. He's constantly there. He's going about abortion. You get the really weird phone call that is Peter, where he's actually phoning like "Don't kill the," kind of thing, which I think is Peter.
I don't think it is.
It could be the Mona.
I think it's the Mona.
The Mona,
up to his usual tricks.
Yeah, well, it could.
He's on the
could be who it is, kind of thing. But I thought they traced it back to Peter's house, and that's why they knew it was him. It could be him.
I don't think. I'm sure.
I thought that was a trace or a tracker that
I feel like
the one that they're like, that's coming from this area or something. It was coming from a different area.
I feel like the first trace she doesn't keep them on the phone long enough.
No, she doesn't for about 2 or 3 of them because they're like, you got to keep them on longer.
You got to keep them going.
That's the only bit of that action that I felt like, because it felt like we had about 3 different phone calls and we keep having like, you need to keep on longer. So they've got them in the house kind of thing, but that bit felt like it was going on for a while. Yeah. Like, when are we getting to this point of this part? Although one scene I did like with Barb and Phyllis is the following scene when she, because obviously we think it's Peter, because Peter obviously then actually appears.
Yeah.
But before that, you get the officer, the one who got tricked by fellatio.
Yeah. The fool.
Not in a good way.
Yeah.
By fellatio. But he's like literally like he's telling her to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And he's like, do not go again. He's like, do not go up that stairs. Do not go. Get out of the house. It doesn't matter. Go and get out of the house. To Barb and Phyllis, and then she's still drawn to be like Barb, Phyllis, like calling up to them kind of thing, and like nothing's happening, and he's like screaming. I think that's a really good tense scene.
It is.
Where he's like really building it up, and he's like, for God's sake, get out of the...
Well, they get the bit where...
And she's just not like, she's like, no, and then obviously she opens the door and it's...
They call Mr. John Saxon, and then they say to Mr. John Saxon, like, the call's coming from this house, and they're like, oh, you got it wrong. Like, that's where the call's destination is. And they're like, no, the call's also coming from there. And then he calls Jess and he's like, oh shit, the kid is in the house. The kid is in the house.
Yeah.
And it's a classic.
Yeah, I think this I really do like this, like ramping up in like the third act. I like the play with you, like the way it plays with you, Peter. That assumption, like that's why I think this film feels in a lot of ways was so much ahead of its time in the way it like approached like Final Girl, like the way it was like quite positive of things, but also the way that it didn't just go from the most obvious kind of Agatha Christie, like oh who did it, kind of murder. It's like you got Peter and you fully believe the twist that you're like, oh, well, of course it's going to be Peter. Here who he is, there we go. And down, they kind of like end up like they're approaching like the basement kind of thing, like who's down there.
Even during the confrontation when she does go up to the room and where Jess sees Barb and she sees Phil dead, and you see Billy in the behind the door or in the cupboard beaten off, and she and they have that confrontation. They keep Billy so well hidden, that he kind of you could almost imagine that like he wasn't actually there when they were filming it, because it's just like a bang, like a door coming in, like a bang, and then him reacting to it. Like you maybe see like a hand, you don't see the whole person, and it kind of keeps it very much like not just of it's because they're going to do the whole reveal of it's Peter. But it kind of makes you think, like, who the fuck is this guy? Yeah. Like, he could do this, get out, and then, like, tomorrow you could just be walking down the street and just pass him. Yeah. And you would never know. It's this real creepiness to it.
You can see where the 2019 version got its whole, like, twists on, like, the men, like, from the Peter character, because he does come across as quite, like, overly angry, overly possessive, all about himself. You could almost see where the whole sorority bros kind of, like, thing kind of comes from it kind of thing. But this is where it's like it's hard to when you look at this one and then look at that, I think it does make that one look even worse, because it's like yours was almost so much more of the obvious and this one actually played so much more on the darker idea of what could actually come of it. Because obviously we're then like when John Saxon and all that actually appear, it's you find out that Jess overcame, like what we believe is overcame Peter and beat him to death with a fire poker. He's there in a bloody, she's like cradling him in a bloody nest. She's fake, and you're like, okay, like he was the killer, and you go because he was still coming across creepy when he was like approaching her. But he was still being quite like overly possessive kind of thing. So you're not sure what Peter was going to do, but this is just an add-on of what he was going to do. But there must have been enough that she was like, I'm going to beat you to death.
Fucking cave your
I'm
head.
going to fucking cave you. But she also may have reacted too harshly because of all of the trauma of what's been coming, the constant on-edgeness of happening, that she may have reacted 100%. Too quickly.
100%.
And obviously this is just, once you know what the twist comes after it, but, once you know that Peter's not the killer, this suddenly becomes much more interesting, because you're like, you just murdered an innocent man.
Just caved his fucking head in.
Yeah, like there's actually now like a kind of like it's almost interested in like your mind of like what followed this then, because technically she murdered someone. And technically it wasn't thing. She may have been doing it, but then it's also like, was it in self-defense or actually was this?
Yeah.
You know, did you just react because you were so built up by this other killer?
And
that actually, I was like, actually,
and is Peter's
this
name
one's
now
going to court, and she may be going to prison.
Well, they might. From the sound,
that baby's being born in her.
Yeah, that baby's being born in a cell.
You ain't getting that abortion because you'll go to prison.
I mean, from the end of it, this is the one thing that I love the ending because I completely forgot about it. So I got to the point where I was like,
I loved this.
I was like, oh, okay, maybe it is Peter. And then she's in bed, and she's like asleep. John Saxon and all the police officers are like, "All right, sound like it was Peter."
Yeah.
You know, like Peter did it. He was jealous. You know, he didn't want the abortion. He was a nutter. All right, that's it, lads. Case solved. Let's go home. And they leave her just to sleep in the bed. And I was like, okay.
There is a glaring. Yeah, I know there's an like. I both love this ending, and it has the most glaring like plot. Like hole, like of how no one would act like that kind of thing. It is literally like I literally go, who the fuck leaves a victim alone?
Yeah.
Inside the traumatizing house.
Yeah.
So they don't take her somewhere else. No, I'm going to leave her inside the house of the trauma.
Yeah.
Where she's been at to sleep by herself for the murder. You know, and also then doesn't do a full search of the house before they leave because they obviously didn't do a full house because all the bodies are still.
Well, the bodies are still upstairs. And they're just like, nah.
There's like one cop we find out is outside the front of the house, but inside of this giant house, inside of this huge house where there's apparently been someone hiding all this time, they're just like, oh yeah, she's beating that guy to death. That'll do.
She's like, the calls were coming from inside the house. That's fine. Oh, do you want to check?
Do you want to maybe check whereabouts it would have come from? Because there's only one landline downstairs.
Yeah.
Nah.
Do you want? Oh, what should we do? Should we leave a police? Well, we'll leave a police officer outside. Oh, the one.
Do you know where the other bodies went? Because we were looking for some other people, weren't we? Nah.
I mean, the last police officer.
It's Christmas, lads. Let's go.
We left a police officer outside of the car 2 hours ago, and he got killed.
Yeah,
that's fine.
That's fine. Let's just leave this one out the front because the killer's definitely beat him.
And then they look at the camera and wink. You know, and I love the ending, but I was like, okay, and it's weird because. There's a film that we will be talking about next week. Yeah. Little tease for you, another Christmassy one. So hit that subscribe.
It is festive season.
It is, and leave us a lovely review. And it has the exact same thing at the end that just makes no sense. And I will reveal all when we get to the end of that.
I'd be interested in that one.
And it's going back to Black Christmas. It's a great film that has so many creepy moments to it. But I just find that ending so laughable. You know, because then the phone rings again.
Yeah.
He calls
it
her
rings
back
downstairs and it's ringing, and you see the police officer stood outside the house as well. And obviously we're hearing it ring, and the police officers still just stood there like, that's someone's just calling. Someone's just ringing over, you know, it's fine. Which, you know, I guess it is just a phone at the end of the day, but it's just
phones
the fact,
ring.
You know, you can hear the killer's voice from the attic. And with Claire, and their bodies are still in there and things. And it is a hugely dark, and it's such a really good twist, and it makes everything that came before it even creepier. So it is fantastic, and it literally, to be fair, all they need. There's only one thing they actually needed to do that would have at least alleviated some of that problem. Is put her out of the house. Don't leave her to bed in the. If you had just not left her to sleep in the house, which no one would do in that traumatizing situation. No one would leave that woman to sleep in that house. Yeah. She would be taken. Even if she needs rest or whatever, she would be removed from the house.
Of course.
And if she'd been removed from the house, if they hadn't fully searched the house yet or done all that stuff, because they could be waiting for someone to come and do it.
Maybe.
Which totally worked with the whole Bob Clark saying that if you were to do a sequel, he would have said that the guy would have got arrested because they would have then found him if he was still hiding in that house because the police still would have been around. So that all would have worked. It's just the fact that she's left to sleep in the house makes it all suddenly come on guys, even if you were going to leave her in that house, you would have done all this stuff first. But no, you wouldn't just leave her in that house.
Yeah. I also think the attic is open, because I'm sure the attic is very similar to the one that I've got.
No, because that's the last shot is the attic opens.
Oh, it opens.
Yeah, the attic opens.
I thought
before,
it was still open.
No, the attic opens before. Then the telephone begins to ring. Then
Okay.
we see the shot outside the house.
There we go.
So that's it. So
That's my bad.
it's him coming.
It's him coming out.
He's coming down. So basically, you're like, it leaves you on the Jess is fucked.
Yeah, she's gone.
Yeah, she's the baby's aborted. The baby, not in the way it was planned.
Yeah, yeah, baby and mother. Right?
Going blacker.
Yeah, we
darker.
Blacker Christmas. Yeah,
it's but it's really hard because I liked it so much that I was just like, I could forgive that problem because I think the ending just makes the film so much darker.
Yeah.
I think the phone calls and Billy is a really interesting and scary creation.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think it does. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at like other horror movies, it does go into stuff like One Missed Call. You know, you could arguably say like Scream, even maybe.
Yeah.
This idea of like taunting over the phone.
I do think there's so many slashes of that whole era because Halloween influenced so many, but so many little interesting parts of Halloween came from this.
Yeah.
So I do think it's just like the effect of this is just, you know, but it's interesting because I do think there's a lot of people that have never watched this one compared to how many have watched Halloween. I do think that this one still seems to be one that people are, or they've seen the remakes and they've never seen
maybe,
you know, those kind of ones. So, you know, again, like I don't know why you listen to this whole episode, but if you have never watched it, go and watch the original. You know, don't worry too much about the remakes.
Yeah, and
they're fine. You might enjoy them. They're perfectly, but they're much more throwaway, I would say. Whereas I think this one, I understand why it's a longer standing holiday classic.
Yeah, definitely. I think it does have a lot of really kind of good moments to it. I think it could probably be a little tighter, I think, in moments.
I think there is some stuff about, some of their character like stuff and stuff that we have to like follow at times, or that, like you said, with the dad and stuff like that. Where occasionally, and some of the bits maybe going a bit overly longer than they need to go on. It could be tighter, but I think the general murderer killer and the performances for the most part are pretty strong.
Oh yeah, I think it's.
And I do like the female focus, even the fact that apart from Peter, but he's murdered by one of the women. It isn't all like female death as well.
Yeah.
So it is all about someone who is specifically targeting women. So it is very much like.
And even the police don't take like the women seriously for a good 2/3 of the film.
No,
not until a man comes in and it's like in the fur jacket and he's like, "My girlfriend's being abused," and they're like, "Oh, your girlfriend's being abused. We will not stand for it."
But that's what I mean. It is there is that very much. It's very interesting. That. Written by I think it's Roy Moore and directed by Bob Clark, but they had a very kind of female perspective of this is quite like this is the way that it seems to work.
Yeah,
women don't get this chance. Man tries to take over control of a woman having an abortion and things like that. That's why I think this film was very ahead of its time, and I think this film does that message that the 2019 version does. I think it actually makes a lot of those good points, but it does it in a far more subtler and therefore kind of effective way than just being like, every man that is watching this film, you are trash. You are a piece of ass. Yeah. You deserve to die.
You deserve to die. I mean,
not that it fully did that, but it did in the final act. It kind of went, fuck you all.
I feel like, just for the 2019 one, I feel like, because I don't think we watched it together.
Yeah, we did.
And I remember...
We watched it when we were doing this podcast. Didn't we?
No, we hadn't.
That's
it was
pre-podcast.
Before podcast. It was,
that was before we decided to enlighten you all with our lovely content.
Yes. I remember us watching it and us hearing like, "Oh, it's awful. Like it's shit. It's a man-hating film." All this kind of like brain dead shit that people were saying online. Yeah. And we watched it, and I remember like for the first 2/3, right up until the end, we were like, "Oh, it was pretty good." And then the end, and all I remember is like the men in some frat house were doing something. I just remember them all in robes, and I was like, "This just seems like it's gone into parody, this initiation thing," and now it seems like they've basically had this real. They've had a point.
Like, we sacrificed one of you to do this. Like, what the hell?
It was like they had a point, and then the director was like, "Oh shit! What if they don't understand the point in the last 10 minutes? Well, now we need to beat them over the head with the point." And it had some subtlety, and then at the end, it was just like them just looking at you and telling you what was
It was fine for it to be an event, but the thing is, in this version,
it's a decent film.
It's not terrible. I'm not saying it was pretty bad because I'd say it's definitely like a watchable. Enough. It was good. The performances in it, I actually remember, were absolutely like quite good. Like Imogen Poots and stuff like that. Were quite, but but I just think that in this one, like you've got like this one felt very much like those like those serial killers that you hear about, that you don't actually get to see, that have these real impact. They kill people, they come and go, they disappear, and it felt like that real actual things that were actually like in the 70s, for instance, actually happening to women. Like say like the Anna Kendrick Woman of the Hour recently, like that kind of, the person that kind of comes in, you don't really see, you don't expect it, and then they're gone, and you don't know how many people they've actually killed, and I feel that is like, that feels quite strong in this film, that therefore makes it feel quite real that this is actually happening to people. Without it having to be quite so on the nose. I think that's the problem with, like, it's not so much that it's fully like, oh, man hating, it's the fact that it was too on the nose of it, that you could understand why certain people would start to be like, it feels very targeted. You could understand that, but you need to be able to see both sides of that, and some people are too dumb for that.
Their brains are small.
But yeah, so anyway, as I said, I remember like watching this and then getting to the end and be like, I didn't realise this film fucked so hard.
It pounds.
So I do know there are some problems, and there's some plot problems and stuff like that. But I am now much more on the camp of like, I could definitely rewatch this. I can see myself rewatching this on like love that Christmas time. And this is my Christmas horror choice. I can see why many people say this is like the pinnacle of Christmas horror, and the one that laid a high bar for other ones that are often struggle, because there aren't like millions of Christmas horror films.
No.
A lot of them are not always that good.
100%.
Yeah, there are only a few that kind of really stand out. Yeah. And next week we'll be covering one of them.
Yes, we will. Which I think is a good way to end it. So, that's been our discussion on Black Christmas 1974. Little sprinkle into the into the remakes, and a little tease for what's to come as we enter into the festive period. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Please leave us a lovely review. Otherwise, we will wait in your attics. And make sure that you come and let us know what you think of Black Christmas 1974. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter /X, they must insist on calling it, at CMTH Podcast. Take care, salutations, and we shall see you then. Bye bye.